Here's a thesis, is that we really do have kind of a political spectrum right now that can be broken up, broadly speaking, in a very reductive way, into those who prefer stability over democracy, or those who prefer democracy over authoritarianism. And the idea in my book is that what you have in this country right now are Protestant Christian Reconstructionists. And if you're like, what does that mean? Just imagine Doug Wilson, the Doug Wilson people. You also have traditional reactionary Catholics, a la J.D. Vance, a la Kevin Roberts, Heritage Foundation, a la Adrian Vermeule or Patrick Deneen, if you know who those people are. You also have tech lords, people like Peter Thiel, people like Curtis Yarvin, people like Mark Andreessen. And what they all agree on, Dan, those three groups I just mentioned, Protestant, Catholic, tech, is that they want stability over democracy. They want order and hierarchy over egalitarianism, equality, or representation. They all agree, and they're open about it. You could not have said that 10 years ago. They all say, look, democracy is not something I'm interested in, and I actually think it's holding us back from human flourishing. What we need is order and hierarchy. What we need is to overrun the voice of the people and the Constitution in the name of creating a new kind of country. And Singapore, for the techies, is high on the list. If you ask Curtis Yarvin, if you ask Nick Land, if you ask any of the folks on the tech right, what country do you think got it right? It's always Singapore. Singapore is their thing, okay? And here's what Barbara Walter says about Singapore. Singapore is stable because it's sui generis. It's a tiny, exceptionally wealthy, ethnically homogeneous, tightly managed city-state that has never been replicated anywhere else. The idea that America had become a Singapore is never going to happen. Instead, if we become an anocracy, something much worse will. Now, what is an anocracy? An anocracy, Dan, is something that Barbara Walter calls a middle place between autocracy and democracy. And what she argues is that when you have something like a country, the United States, that has been a democracy, that slides into autocracy, and it kind of lives in this middle place, what you get is economic instability, political instability, social instability, violence, and so on. They're the most violent, unrestful places in the world, according to Barbara Walter. Now, the thing I want to throw at you, Dan, and see what you think is this. And it's an open question. You and I haven't talked about it. I don't know what you're going to say. This is not scripted. It's none of that. What we have are people in this country who are overwhelmingly willing to say at this moment, democracy is not sacred and democracy is actually bad. And if we had a monarchy, an autocracy, if we had a CEO who ran the country with a board of directors, if we had a government that was integrated into the Catholic Church, that would be way better. And the reason I think that that story is gaining traction is because it promises people belonging. It promises people a relief of their alienation and their pain. And it promises them that if they just submit to the authoritarian leader, the monarch, the CEO, that everything they need will be taken care of them, will given to them. And unfortunately, and hear me out, unfortunately, I think an increasing number of Americans are willing to take that deal because life is so uncertain. They have been addled by algorithms that have been teaching them to fear apocalypse and others for decades. They have been told that everything from the border crisis, quote unquote, to the woke mind virus, to trans people, to immigrants, to Barack Obama, to the coastal elites, they are going to destroy them. They're going to take everything from them. They're going to take their guns. They're going to take their way of life. They're going to take their livelihood. They're going to take their homes, all of it. If you're a Christian, you're going to be put in jail. I mean, do you remember when Barack Obama and Joe Biden were president? We heard respectively that it was going to be illegal to be Christian soon. Okay. I think people are willing to take that bet now more than ever. And that is why we see the rise of these kinds of movements, whether it's Christian fascism, a la William Wolfe and C.J. Engel and Andrew Isker, people I talk about a lot here who are Doug Wilson's like progeny spiritually, Whether it's the rad trad Catholics and J.D. Vance willing to defend people saying, I love Hitler, or whether it's tech lords who are like, I'd rather just autocracy so I can have a stable environment for my business. That's better than democracy. It's a story about what will fix you. Now, I want to contrast that with the No Kings rallies in a minute, but let me stop and get your thoughts on all this.
Yeah, so, excuse me, a lot of thoughts on this. One, for a long time, we've said it on here, I don't know how many times, people have said for a long time, maybe it's a mistake, a big mistake, to think that the federal government's like a business. And I've argued this for years. You had this notion that a business leader will know how to run the federal government and so forth. And we get it in higher ed, you get it in all these domains of society where a business model becomes the model. Why? Oh, efficiency and all these other kind of things. And I've argued for years, and we've talked about it here. The mistake with that is businesses are autocratically structured. That was the argument. Yeah, if you want efficiency, concentrating power into one decision maker, that's the way to do it. Democracy is not efficient. It was designed not to be efficient. Higher ed, educating people, getting people to think critically is not efficient. Practices like, I don't know, learning how to practice medicine or different things like this. It's not efficient. It's time consuming and it's labor intensive and it doesn't give you a quick return on investment. And sometimes, collaborative decision making takes a long time for things to happen. And there are people who, if it works really well, people might say there's not a clear winner and a loser. And so that's like one piece where this is a process that's been in play for a long time. And the mistake was to ever say, oh, the business model needs to be our model for society or government or these other social domains. And this is what we see. So this is one of those things where this element that has been subterranean for a long time is now just sort of rising to the surface. And lo and behold, what critics of the corporatizing of all elements of American society have said for decades, here it is. It's the business leaders who are like, I like being autocrat. I like being the one who gets to make the call. I like being the one who gets to decide everything. Maybe the government should work that way. Now, here's the concern. Somebody says, well, okay, like maybe that's efficient. To your point of like, how this resonates with people. This notion of, it promises belonging and relief from alienation. It does. But the question is always for whom? And that brings us back to that story of that narrative. Today's contemporary American autocrats, if you're the right kind of American, you've got a place. And yeah, I mean, it might be great for you. Might be a great setup, right? If you're a person of color, you're the wrong kind of woman, you're not an alpha male, you're a queer person, you are, and we just run down the list, you're not going to have a place. And that's the key, and that's the construction. That's what ties it together with this other point that we're making about this narrative of who the real Americans are, how they're persecuted by these evil forces within, the production of enemies and so forth, because that's the other side of this. To keep making that work, to keep creating, and I hope I don't take people too far in a weird direction with this, to create that promise that we will keep you free from alienation, you have to create the sources of alienation. Mm-hmm. You have to produce enemies that are constantly threatening you so that there's a reason why the autocrat has to remain in power, why the system has to remain in place. And so even after all the enemies have been eradicated, we're just going to make new ones. Mm-hmm. And if people think, well, how does that happen? We see it with the immigration stuff. Remember once upon a time when the argument was we're going to go after the dangerous immigrants, the ones with criminal records?
Yep.
Every analysis now shows that it's not what's happening. It's just everybody. Yeah. It's
children.
American citizens. It's
American
children,
citizen,
right?
13-year-olds.
Yeah, it's not once upon a time. The idea was that, we needed labels like terrorist for people who are really dangerous and hate America and hate our way of life. Well, now that's like half of all Americans. Yeah. If you look at the statistics and how many people voted for Trump and all that, half of America are terrorists and evil. So that's the dynamic there that has to be understood. Is you're absolutely right. It resonates with huge swaths of people because it promises alienation, but that's an alienation that has been created by the very people who are promising that relief to put them in power. That's the giant shell game that's at work here, and that's what we see. Same way that, the same business leaders who want to talk about how we value economic stability and whatever, they're the same ones that have been driving the neoliberal economic engine for decades that thrives on and is built on economic instability and economic insecurity. Those are driving forces of their model. Why? So that they have a reason to claim the power that they claim out of the instability that they created. It's a kind of protection racket. And I talk about this other places. I realize that, but you sort of create the threat, and then you're the savior who can remove the threat. And that's the dynamic that works there. And so it resonates with huge numbers of Americans, but at the cost of everybody else.
We could obviously take this so many directions. If you create an economic system that only benefits the very 1%, then you're going to have people who feel alienated and like they need a new system. If you create a social system that is polarized and addled by algorithms, then you're right. There's so many ways to go about this analysis. Let me then bring this back to no kings. Okay. I think no kings is going to be big, and I'm looking forward to seeing people energized. I talked to a friend yesterday on the phone who said, I just want to get out on the street and yell with people who are as frustrated and frightened and angry as I am. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. And that's great. And I want to see people activated. I want to see people brought into networks and campaigns and organizations where they can start to volunteer, make phone calls, get on board with a social issue that they can contribute to in their local community. Reproductive rights, voting rights, all of it. I want to see everybody organized and everybody unified around the idea that we don't have kings in the United States, and we're not going to let Donald Trump be one, or JD Vance or anyone else. Yes, I'm on board. I hope you can hear it in my voice. Let's go. Let's do it. No kings as a rally, though, is like a starting point. And hear me out, friends. Okay, do not email me and say, why are you throwing water on like momentum? I'm not. I interviewed Leah Greenberg, a month ago, and the co-director of Indivisible, and had her on the show. So please keep all that in mind. The tech fascists, the Christian fascists, the rad trad Catholics, the people I'm writing about in my book, they all are telling a story. And in surprising ways, those stories overlap right now. They're telling a story that in many points is like the same story. You never thought Peter Thiel and Elon Musk would tell the same story as Doug Wilson. But there's points with those timelines and those narratives that line up really well right now. But they're giving people a story. They're giving people a bad guy and a good guy. They're giving people a role to play. They're giving them a solution to their problem. They're giving them a cosmic civilizational model of like how to envision world history, the future their children can inhabit, everything else. No kings is only a starting point because it's not a story. Yes, we don't want a king. Okay. But and this is where I really want to go. And I don't know if people are going to think this is controversial. I don't really think it is. I think when you say to people, we're here to protect democracy, there's a lot of people in this country for whom democracy is an empty signifier. And this is not me being anti-democratic. This is not me saying, oh, Dan, I need to tell you something. Group chat, might as well tell you in the podcast. I kind of think democracy is overrated. That's not what I'm doing. What I'm saying is like, when you hang out with a 24-year-old whose whole adult life has been Trump, income inequality, a refusal to address the climate situation, congressional gridlock, gerrymandering, the misogyny against Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris when they ran for president, I can go on down the line. George Floyd, the pandemic. When you say democracy to those folks, there's nothing in their bones. It's like, oh yeah, good old democracy. Man, I wish we could get it back. That thing that works so well. And I think in theory, they know. In theory, they know democracy, yes. Better than autocracy, better than oligarchy, better than fascism, yes. But it's not a story right now that invites people into an epic where they're like, yeah, if we work together, we're going to build that thing over there. When they hear protect democracy, it almost just feels like, hey, can we raise enough money to like, keep the plumbing and the lights and the drywall at that kind of dilapidated community center over there, fix it up a little bit? Wouldn't that be cool? Can you guys come out Saturday and we'll all fix up the community center so that it has like plumbing and electricity and like, working air conditioner and stuff? They don't feel like what's happening on the other side, which is they're being invited into a grand epic of civilizational proportions that will relieve so much of the fear and anxiety and uncertainty that they have about themselves, about their families, about their country, about everything else. Democracy is an empty signifier, Dan. And I'm not trying to be some kind of lefty bro who's like, you know, what I am trying to say is you need a message that invites people into a story that they can see themselves in and that they want to build with all the other people around them. Otherwise, if you just keep saying, we got to save democracy, people are going to look at you like, you mean that thing that hasn't worked since I've been alive? That thing that like created the 99% being like, you know, completely income inequality folks compared to the 1%? You mean that thing that refuses to even address the climate crisis? That thing that created the AI that's probably going to like just destroy all of us? Sure. Yeah. Why don't I get here and save that? I just think it's an empty signifier. It's one of those words that doesn't mean anything anymore. You ever been in a relationship, Dan, that's ending? This is getting personal and you don't have to answer. But like you still say I love you to each other? Like I've been in those. I've been in a couple of those. I hope you're not listening, you know, people that I've been in those with. And you still say I love you and you give a hug goodbye or something. But both of you know. Yeah, man, both of you know. Both of you know. It's just that's how I feel is going with democracy right now. I love democracy. But people, there's no electricity. There's no sense of like future anticipation. There's no sense of desire. And that's what concerns me.